I, 28 male, had been debating whether to talk about this for a long time, but with everything that's happened recently, I finally feel like I need to get it out. This whole situation started about 3 years ago, and just when I thought it was behind me, it somehow managed to creep back into my life in ways I never expected. Back when I was 19, my mom remarried. Her new husband, Rick, was about 46 at the time. Since I was already in college when they got married, I didn't have to live with them full time. I would just visit during breaks and holidays, trying to be as polite as possible for my mom's sake. Rick had this way of joking that always made me uncomfortable. His humor was dark, filled with comments about violence, death, and other things that just didn't sit right with me. My mom always brushed it off, saying that it was just his personality and he didn't mean anything by it. I did my best to avoid him, but I never thought too much of it beyond that. After college, I moved back to my hometown and got my own apartment about 20 minutes from where they lived. I had just started an entry-level marketing job and was trying to save as much money as I could, so I'd visit their house fairly often for dinner. I always offered to contribute, bringing food, helping with cooking, but Rick never missed an opportunity to make comments about how I was mooching off them. He would throw little jabs every time I was there, always acting like I was some kind of burden. My mom told me not to take it seriously, that he was just teasing, but the way he said it always felt like it was meant to get under my skin. Everything changed one 4th of July. They were hosting a barbecue and about 15 people showed up. Some were Rick's family. Some were my mom's friends, and there were a few neighbors as well. It was a typical summer gathering with plenty of food and drinks. Most people had been drinking for hours, though I was taking it slow since I needed to drive home later. Rick, on the other hand, was drinking heavily, and his jokes started getting meaner as the day went on. As usual, I tried to ignore him. By the time it got dark enough for fireworks, most of us were gathered around their pool, waiting. I was sitting at the edge with my feet in the water, scrolling through my phone, just passing the time. Without any warning, Rick came up behind me and shoved me into the pool. To anyone watching, it might have looked like a harmless prank, but to me, it was something else entirely. I was fully clothed, my phone was in my hands, and worst of all, Rick knew I couldn't swim. As a child, I had nearly drowned, and ever since then, I had a deep fear of water. My mom knew. Rick knew. They both had been aware of it for years. The second I hit the water, panic set in. I started flailing, completely overwhelmed, my mind shutting down from fear. The pool was deep where I had fallen in, about 8 feet, and I couldn't reach the bottom. I honestly thought I was going to die. Somewhere in the chaos, I heard laughter. Rick was standing at the edge, watching and laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. He was making comments, but my brain wasn't processing any of them. I was too busy fighting for air, and thankfully, someone else at the party realized that I was actually drowning. I think it was my mom's friend, Janet, who jumped in first, and then someone else helped pull me out. I was coughing up water, trying to get my breath back, and Rick was still standing there laughing. He kept saying how I should have seen my face, how I needed to learn to take a joke. My mom was hovering nearby, looking concerned, but she didn't say a word to him. It was like she was torn between comforting me and not upsetting Rick. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I told Rick that he could have killed me. He barely reacted and just rolled his eyes, shrugged, and said something about how if he had actually wanted to kill me, I'd already be dead. Then he winked, turned around, and went to grab another beer. I was shaking, partly from being soaked and partly from the cold, but mostly from pure anger and disbelief. My mom asked me to stay, telling me Rick had just been drinking too much and he hadn't meant anything by it. I couldn't even look at her. I left. Driving home in wet clothes, my phone completely ruined from the water. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. I didn't even know if what Rick did was technically illegal, but I felt like I had to do something. The officer I spoke with told me that depending on how it was framed, it could be considered assault or even attempted manslaughter. Since Rick knew I couldn't swim, they took my statement and said they would look into it. As soon as my mom found out, she called me completely hysterical. She begged me to drop it, saying I was overreacting and tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. Rick, she claimed, was devastated that I would accuse him of something like that. I refused to back down, whether he had meant to hurt me or not. He had done something reckless and dangerous, and I wasn't going to just let it go. 2 days later, Rick was arrested and he was charged with assault and reckless endangerment. That was when things really started to spiral. My mom lost it, saying I had ruined their lives. Rick worked as a contractor for a local government agency and she was terrified he would lose his job. She screamed at me over the phone, saying I was dead to her unless I dropped the charges. I told her that wasn't how it worked. It wasn't up to me anymore. The police and the DA were involved now. Things only got worse from there. Rick got out on bail and my mom started turning family and friends against me. She told everyone I was being vindictive, making a big deal out of nothing. Some people believed her, like my aunt and a couple of cousins, while others, especially those who had been at the party, supported me. The legal process was slow. Rick's lawyer tried to downplay the whole thing, making it sound like a misunderstanding. I had to testify at a preliminary hearing, which was one of the most stressful things I had ever done. My mom sat behind Rick the whole time, glaring at me. The judge decided there was enough evidence for trial. About a month before the trial, Rick's lawyer offered a plea deal. Rick would plead guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. In exchange, he would serve 30 days in county jail, do 200 hours of community service, and take anger management classes. The DA asked if I was okay with the deal, and I agreed. I didn't want to go through a full trial if it could be avoided. When Rick took the plea, my mom completely lost it. She showed up at my apartment screaming at me, saying I had chosen to destroy my own family instead of letting it go. She said she never wanted to see me again, and that was it. That was the last time we spoke until recently. For the past 3 years, I've had no contact with my mother. After everything that happened, I decided it was better for my mental health to move on and focus on my own life. And honestly, I've done well for myself. I got a promotion at work, started dating someone seriously, who is now my fiancé, and have been in therapy to work through the trauma of both the pool incident and the loss of my relationship with my mom. Cutting her out of my life wasn't easy. I missed her, especially during big moments. But I couldn't understand how she could choose a man who nearly cost me my life over her own son. No matter how much time passed, the betrayal never stopped stinging. Then, 3 days ago, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but for some reason I did. It was my mom. She was sobbing so hard at first that I thought something terrible had happened. Maybe Rick had died or she was seriously ill. But then she started apologizing, frantic and desperate, saying she should have believed me, should have protected me, and that she was so sorry. I didn't know what to say. After 3 years of silence, it was overwhelming to suddenly hear her voice filled with regret. Before I could even process it, she started explaining why she was calling. Apparently, Rick has a 16-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. I knew she existed, but she had always lived in another state with her mom, so I had never met her. Recently, though, she moved in with Rick and my mom, and last week, Rick pulled the same so-called prank on her that he had pulled on me. He pushed her into the pool, knowing she wasn't a strong swimmer. Unlike me, she didn't swallow much water and was able to make it to the edge of the pool, but the experience terrified her. The moment she got out, she called her mom, completely shaken. Now her mother is threatening to take full custody and has already filed a police report against Rick. The police started investigating and in the process found my case from 3 years ago. They contacted my mom, bringing up what had happened with me, and that's when, according to her, it was like a light bulb went off. She suddenly realized this wasn't just a one-time mistake, but a pattern in Rick's behavior. Now she's begging me to come down and give a statement to support her stepdaughter's case. She says she's left Rick, filed for divorce, and is trying to make things right. She keeps saying how sorry she is and how she should have believed me from the start, and how she sees now that she was blind to who Rick really was. She wants me to know that she's finally choosing me over him. But I don't know what to do. I feel completely torn. On one hand, I want to help this girl. No one should have to go through what I did, especially not a teenager who's just trying to live her life. If my statement could help protect her, it feels like the right thing to do, but at the same time I'm still hurt and angry. My mom only believes me now because it happened to someone else. For 3 years, she was fine with letting everyone think I was overreacting, fine with cutting me out of her life and siding with Rick. Now that it's happened again, she suddenly wants to fix things. It's hard to wrap my head around that. I told her I needed time to think and that I would call her back. That was 3 days ago and I still haven't called. My fiancé thinks I should give the statement but keep firm boundaries with my mom. She says helping the girl doesn't mean I have to let my mom back into my life fully. Some of my friends think I should tell my mom to deal with it on her own, that I don't owe her or Rick anything after the way she treated me. I don't know what's right. Am I being petty for hesitating? Should I help this girl even if it means reconnecting with my mom? Or should I keep my distance and let them handle it themselves? Part of me feels like I should stand my ground and not let my mom back in just because she suddenly decided to believe me. But another part of me can't shake the feeling that if I don't help, I might regret it later. I just don't know what to do. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. I've been reading through all the comments and they've really helped me sort through my feelings about this situation. It's been overwhelming to process everything, but knowing that so many people understand where I'm coming from has made a huge difference. After taking a couple of days to really think things over, I decided to call my mom back. It wasn't an easy decision, and I spent a long time going back and forth on whether I even wanted to hear her out. When I finally dialed her number, my heart was racing. The moment she picked up, I could hear her voice and that she had been crying. The conversation was incredibly difficult for both of us. She broke down multiple times, and I'll admit, I got emotional too. She kept apologizing, saying she had been in denial about Rick's behavior for years, and that she had chosen to believe him over me because the alternative, that she had married someone capable of doing what he did, was too painful for her to accept. She said she wasn't making excuses, just trying to be honest about why she acted the way she did. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. I explained just how deeply her rejection had hurt me and how for 3 years I had to carry the pain of knowing that my own mother thought I was lying or exaggerating about something that had nearly cost me my life. I told her that rebuilding trust wasn't something that could happen overnight, if it was even possible at all. She said she understood and would give me all the time I needed, and that she wasn't expecting immediate forgiveness, but just hoped we could start somewhere. As for Rick's daughter, I knew I had to help her. I agreed to give a statement to the police, and yesterday I spoke with the detective handling her case. I went over everything that had happened 3 years ago in detail, explaining how Rick had pushed me into the pool knowing I couldn't swim, how he laughed when I struggled, and how he had brushed it off like it was nothing. The detective told me that my case significantly strengthened the current investigation, especially since Rick is once again trying to claim the pool incident with his daughter as just a misunderstanding. It's like he has a playbook for getting away with this kind of behavior. I also learned some disturbing details about Rick's behavior toward his daughter since she moved in with them. According to the detective, this wasn't the first time he had done something cruel under the guise of a joke. There had been other incidents less physically dangerous than the pool incident, but still harmful. He had been using fear and humiliation to control her, making her feel small and powerless. The detective said that while none of the other incidents were enough on their own to press charges, together they painted a picture of a man who enjoyed making others feel vulnerable. The detective put me in touch with Rick's daughter's mother, and we ended up having a long conversation on the phone. She was incredibly grateful that I was willing to come forward and give my statement. She said that my testimony could make all the difference in ensuring that Rick's access to his daughter is severely limited. She seemed like a genuinely caring mom who just wants to protect her daughter from further harm. Hearing the fear and frustration in her voice reminded me so much of how I had felt after my own incident. It made me feel even more certain that I was doing the right thing by helping. As for my own mother, after our phone call, I agreed to meet her for coffee tomorrow. It feels like a huge step, and honestly, I'm nervous about it. I don't know how I'll feel seeing her face to face after all this time. Part of me wants to believe she really has changed and that she truly regrets how she treated me. But another part of me is still holding on to the anger and hurt from the past. My therapist thinks meeting with her in person might help me process my emotions and decide where I want to go from here. My fiancé offered to come with me for support, and while I really appreciate that, I think this first meeting needs to be just between my mom and me. I'm still working through so many emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and a strange sense of validation that someone else finally sees Rick for who he really is. For years I was made to feel like I was overreacting, like I was the one causing problems. Now there's proof that he hasn't changed, that he's still the same person who thought it was funny to put someone in danger. It doesn't erase the pain of the past, but it does help me feel like I wasn't crazy for standing my ground. I'll update again after I meet with my mom. No matter how it goes, I know now that I did the right thing by speaking up. Not just for myself, but for that girl who needed someone to believe her. Update 2. I met with my mom at a coffee shop yesterday. I wasn't sure what to expect from the conversation, but when she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted, like someone who had been carrying the weight of regret for far too long. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight, her clothes hanging a little looser than I remembered. Dark circles under her eyes made it clear she hadn't been sleeping well. It was honestly very unsettling to see her like that. The conversation obviously wasn't easy. She started by telling me that she had been staying with her friend Janet since she left Rick about a week ago. She had officially filed for divorce and on top of that, taken out a temporary restraining order against him. She explained that Rick had shown up at Janet's house late one night, drunk and furious, making threats. She didn't go into much detail, but from the way she spoke, I could tell it had scared her enough to take action. I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that she was finally seeing Rick for who he was. Frustration that it had taken so long. And sadness that it had come to this at all. Then she told me more about what had happened with Rick's daughter, Delaney. I had known of her existence, but had never met her, as she had lived with her mother in another state. About 8 months ago, she moved in with Rick and my mom. That's when everything started to unravel. According to my mom, Rick had been treating Delaney the same way he had treated me, mocking her, making cruel jokes at her expense, and criticizing everything from her appearance to her interests and the friends she talked to. My mom admitted that she had asked him to stop multiple times, but he had always brushed it off as just messing around. Over time, he started doing it behind her back, waiting until they were alone to say things that made Delaney feel small and powerless. The pool incident was the breaking point. They had been having a small gathering at the house, just a few people over for drinks and food. Rick had been drinking heavily, which was no surprise, and he started teasing Delaney about being afraid of the water. She could swim, but she wasn't a strong swimmer and felt nervous in deep water. He wouldn't let it go, making comments about how she needed to toughen up. And then, without warning, he pushed her into the deep end while she was fully clothed, her phone in her pocket. Delaney panicked but managed to reach the edge of the pool. She was furious and terrified. As soon as she got out, she called her mom, telling her everything that had happened. That should have been the end of it, but Rick, in his usual cruel way, decided she needed to be punished for overreacting and trying to cause trouble. He took her phone away, telling her she needed to learn respect. My mom was the one who eventually gave Delaney her phone back and helped her pack a bag to leave. Delaney stayed with a friend that night until her mother could drive down to get her. That was when her mom filed a police report and started fighting for full custody. Hearing all this, I felt a sickening sense of déjà vu. It was almost exactly what had happened to me. The difference was this time my mom had actually seen it for herself. I asked her why she had finally decided to leave Rick after all the years she had defended him. She hesitated, and for the first time in a long time, I saw real remorse in her eyes. She told me that when she saw what Rick did to Delaney, it was like watching a replay of my own experience, but this time she couldn't lie to herself. She couldn't make excuses or pretend it was just a misunderstanding. She had been in denial for years, convincing herself that Rick was just rough around the edges and he didn't mean harm. But seeing him treat a vulnerable teenage girl the same way had shattered that illusion. She admitted that Rick hadn't just been cruel to me, he had been cruel to her too. He had been controlling, manipulative, and emotionally abusive, slowly isolating her from friends and family until she felt like she had no one else but him. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me felt a sliver of sympathy, but another part of me still felt angry. Why had it taken something happening to someone else for her to believe me? Why hadn't she seen it when it was me struggling to breathe in that pool 3 years ago? I told her that I was glad she was getting away from Rick, that I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. But I also told her that I wasn't ready to just go back to how things were. The pain of being dismissed and abandoned for years wasn't something I could just forget. I needed time. And if there was ever going to be a chance of rebuilding our relationship, I would need us to go to family therapy together. She agreed immediately, saying she would do whatever it took. Before we parted, she asked me for one more thing. She wanted to know if I'd be willing to meet Delaney. Right now, Delaney was back at Janet's house with her, while her mom handled some work-related issues that were preventing her from taking her home immediately. My mom thought it might help Delaney to talk to someone who had been through a similar experience, someone who would understand what she was going through. I told her I would think about it. I left the coffee shop feeling emotionally drained. There was part of me that wanted to help Delaney, to let her know she wasn't alone, that what happened to her wasn't her fault, but I was also still struggling with my own wounds. It felt strange to be in this position, where I was being asked to provide support to someone else when I was still trying to heal myself. Later that night, I talked to my therapist about everything. She listened carefully and then suggested that meeting Delaney might actually be good for both of us. She pointed out that sometimes helping others who have gone through similar trauma can be a healing experience. Could give me a sense of closure knowing that what happened to me might help someone else. And for Delaney, knowing that someone else had survived what she was going through might make her feel less alone. I still don't know what I'm going to do. I told my mom I'd sleep on it and let her know tomorrow. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything. I'll update again soon. Update 3. Past couple of days have been overwhelming, but in a way that feels strangely necessary. After thinking about it a lot, I decided to meet Delaney. I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but I knew I couldn't ignore this situation. My fiancé came with me for support, and we met at Janet's house where my mom and Delaney have been staying since my mom left Rick. Delaney is a quiet, thoughtful teenager, and she reminded me a lot of myself when I was younger. At first she was pretty reserved, which made sense. She's been through a lot in a short amount of time, and now she was meeting someone who had dealt with the same man hurting her. But once we started talking about music, something clicked. Turns out we both play guitar, and that small connection seemed to help her relax a little. I didn't want to pressure her to talk about Rick, but she brought it up herself. She asked me what happened 3 years ago, and I gave her a simpler version of the story, one that focused more on how it made me feel rather than all the painful details. She listened closely, nodding as I talked, and then she admitted that Rick had made her feel uncomfortable from the moment she moved in with them. The pool incident wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the worst example of how he treated her. What really got to me was how much Delaney blamed herself. She kept saying she should have spoken up sooner, that maybe if she had told her mom earlier about how Rick treated her, none of this would have happened. It was heartbreaking to hear, because I knew exactly what she was feeling. I told her that none of this was her fault, that Rick was the adult and he was the one responsible for his actions, not her. I could see she wanted to believe me, but I know from personal experience that it's not easy to stop blaming yourself overnight. While Delaney and I were talking in the living room, my mom and fiancé were in the kitchen. At one point, Janet pulled me aside and told me something that caught me off guard. Apparently, my mom had been reaching out to a domestic violence support group trying to get help. She had also found financial documents that showed Rick had been hiding money from her for years. It explained why she had felt so trapped. She genuinely believed she couldn't afford to leave him. After a couple of hours, Delaney's mom arrived to pick her up. She's taking Delaney back to their home state, and they're moving forward with the custody battle. Their goal is to get full custody with no visitation rights for Rick. She thanked me for speaking to the police and for spending time with Delaney. Apparently, Delaney had been shutting down, refusing to talk much about what happened. But after meeting me, she opened up more and seemed to be processing things better. That alone made me feel like I had made the right decision in meeting her. As for Rick, things are finally catching up with him. Since he already had a conviction from my case, this second incident, so similar to what happened to me, has triggered even harsher legal consequences. The detective called me yesterday to update me. They're charging him with child endangerment, assault, and violating his probation. He's currently in jail, waiting for a bail hearing. This time, doesn't look like he'll be able to brush it off as a misunderstanding. Before I left Janet's house, my mom asked me if we could start family therapy. I told her I'd think about it, but honestly, I already knew my answer. I agreed. We've scheduled our first session for next week. I don't know where our relationship will go from here. I'm still hurt. I still don't fully trust her, but I also see that she's finally acknowledging the damage she's done, and that means something. Past few years have been a mess. 3 years ago, I was the one being called a liar, the one tearing the family apart because I refused to stay silent. Now I'm the one helping a teenager stay safe from the same man who tried to hurt me. It's a strange sort of validation, but it's not the kind I ever wanted. If I had been believed in the first place, maybe Delaney wouldn't have had to go through this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive my mom. She had chances to do the right thing back then, but she chose to believe Rick over me, and that's not something I can just forget. But at the same time, I do see her differently now. She was a victim too, in her own way. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand it. For now, I'm just taking things one step at a time. My fiancé has been my rock through all of this, and I couldn't be more grateful for her support. Delaney and I exchanged numbers before she left, and I told her she could reach out anytime she needed to talk to someone who understood. I hope she does. I don't know if I'll update again unless something major happens, but I just want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice and support. It's helped more than I can even put into words to have people give me perspective on this complicated situation. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.